This episode of the Restoration Today podcast is brought to you by Epic Estimates. Whether it's fire, water, wind, or mold damage, Epic Estimates delivers fast, accurate estimates for your property damage needs. Using Xactimate and Symbility, we take your scan documentation and scope to create detailed estimates, helping you save time and avoid costly mistakes. Visit epicestimates.com to learn more. This episode is also brought to you by Violand's new V Street platform. We all know that running a business in the trades can be tough, but you don't have to do it alone. V Street, Violand's new online platform, gives you access to hundreds of trade-specific business documents, procedures, data, analytics, and CEC-approved training courses. Receive practical guidance from their team of expert advisors to help you build a successful business. And right now, you can try it for free. Check it out at violand.com/vstreet. Hey restorers, welcome to a fresh episode of the Restoration Today podcast. I guarantee that the guest I have with me today is a familiar face for most of you. Clint Junell with Job Docs. He's a co-founder there and has been around the industry for quite a while. He was a restorer, now in the software space, and knows a lot about the industry and also knows a lot about hockey, which I enjoy talking about more than restoration every once in a while. Hockey is so fun, and I've enjoyed watching his sons run on Facebook and all of that. So that's something we'll maybe talk about later in the podcast. But Clint, I'm going to toss it over to you to kind of introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background for people who might not know you.
Sure. And I'll clarify, I am still a restorer.
Right.
I am still actively running a restoration company in DFW. So part of that is what led to the whole software side of things.
Yep.
But yeah, so guys, I'm Clint. It's nice to meet you. I've been in the restoration space for right at about 30 years now, in various different aspects of that. Yes, I am old enough for that. I do look old enough for that. But the reality is I started in the early 90s. My father separated his dad's plumbing company from an HVAC company, and that became an air conditioning division and an air quality division. So my first run at the restoration space was in air quality when black mold was a thing and sick building syndrome was a deal. And I was one of the first mold inspectors recognized by the Texas Department of Health in 1994. Before there was any licensing, before there's any requirements, it was, hey, let's go do this. And so I ventured off as a 19-year-old kid to start trying to investigate problems in buildings and figure out, okay, what's causing this issue and navigating airflow. But I understood the HVAC side. And so it was something that worked out for me. As a result, I met several restorers in that process because mold was a thing. And I met and visited with all the different groups of people that were doing restoration throughout Texas and partly throughout the country because I was being called to go do investigations on things. So I did that. And then, in 2003-04, I moved to DFW because I wanted out of the mold space primarily. I kind of wanted out of the restoration industry. So all of you that try to get out, just know this is a lesson. You are never leaving the space.
No.
You're always going to be in restoration. So if you haven't gotten ingrained yet, run now. But the reality is I tried to get out of the space for a little bit, wanted to do something else, primarily because what I was doing on the investigation side and in the mold industry in the mid 90s up until 2000 was a long game on consulting because restoration companies would get projects and they would start these restoration projects or the remediation projects and houses would be torn up for a long period of time. And there was fights between insurance companies. There's always fights with insurance companies, but in some cases there was validity to what was happening in the mold space because they would do a $2,000 air scrubber and they would run it for 100 days in a property at $100 a day. And, they're making a fortune off of this. And the way my structure was with insurance companies, they didn't want to pay for the consulting side until the remediation was complete and the project was clear. Well, that was a beating. So I moved to DFW, played in real estate a little bit on buying and selling and flipping houses because I understood the construction side and did that for a while. In 2008, the economy crashed. I had, as we talked about in hockey, so my son is a 2008 birth year. And in 2008, the economy crashed and I lost my tail in some real estate. I was exposed, a lot of properties, most of them all leased out. But when the market crumbled, everybody was in a bind. And so I was left holding quite a bit of real estate in a bad situation. Unfortunately, I didn't create it, but Hurricane Ike hit Galveston in 2008. I knew the restoration space. I had a lot of relationships with restorers because of what I had been doing in the past. And I was like, you know what, let's go to Galveston and let's do some restoration. and let's see what happens. And so we jumped off into that process and did some projects, technically without a company at the time, but went out and did some projects and made some money, and then started Mr. Restore, which is the fire and water restoration company we have in DFW. So now we're 3 offices currently, and my leadership team has a plan to move up I-35 that runs, from Austin up through Dallas, and we're going to move up through, we're already in Oklahoma City. We're going to go to Kansas City. We're going to go to Des Moines, Iowa. We're going to go to Minneapolis. That's the plan right now. And so that's our growth trajectory and the direction we're going. But yeah, you asked about job docs. And so the reality is, early on in the process, I realized I wasn't smart enough to run a restoration company. It's more difficult than it seems. And to keep up with all the moving parts and all the moving people and requests from insurance companies and customers and those types of things required a little more robust method of trying to navigate, okay, well, where are we at on this? And so we ventured off and, started building a product. And initially it was, well, I'm going to grow and I'm going to build this franchise model. And as I build this franchise model, I'm going to be in a position where I can, just have this for myself. The reality was that's a lot harder process than I wanted it to be too. And so then we started selling the software to other restorers throughout the country because products are difficult. And I didn't find anything that really fit what I was trying to do because I don't run my restoration company the way, others do. And so, it was, I don't want to have to run my restoration company exactly the same way that so-and-so does. And as a result, that's kind of what we were pigeonholed into at that time for sure, in restoration software. And so I wanted to build my own and do my own thing. And then as we started selling it, it became this opportunity to customize the software. So you tell me your business practices and I'll make my software bend to that. I'm not going to tell you that what you're doing is bad and no, these are the best business practices. If you ask me and you say, hey, help us do this, then we can certainly work in that direction. But I'm not going to command that you have to do a certain thing. And I've had people go, well, just set it up how Mr. Restore set up. I'm like, well, I can do that, but you're not staffed the same way I am.
Yeah.
So if you're not staffed the same way I am, the software doesn't need to be the same way. So it's been a fun journey, but yeah. So, we started a software, we officially launched it kind of at the end of 2016 to make it available to the market. And they've just kind of been plugging away at it since that time, while still running and growing a restoration company. So it's fun. It's a fun journey.
Is it fun? You're on both sides of the spectrum here. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So how much has the industry changed since 2008? You joined kind of in an interesting time, and how much have you seen it change from 2008 to 2024?
There's a lot of change. Now, my experience over the last 30 years is there's cycles of change that occur in the industry regardless. From TPA programs to, we're going to have vendor programs to we're going to shut that down, we're going to do something different, to we're going to have a vendor program to shut that down and do something different. So that's just been a cycle that's occurred for forever, as the best as I can remember. The space has gotten strange from their social media has really kind of been able to create an environment that says, hey, I'm out here doing restoration, and it allows you to build some relationships. And some of that is great, right? I love part of what happens. I love some of the different social media groups that exist. I participate in some of them. Some of it gets a little wacky because we have people out there that we were all new at one point. And I've seen some of the comments in the restoration space where somebody's asking a question like, oh, you're a restorer. Shouldn't you know that? Like just help some, what is the point? Do you feel better about that? It's like some of the hockey coaches my son has had that are 40 years old and they're berating a 12-year-old. Does that help? Did that help the situation? Did that make anybody better? And so that's been weird to watch some of the social media stuff occur. But I mean, honestly, when I first started in the Zach Morris phone, the Motorola that had the long antenna that stuck up out of it, I was carrying that phone initially when I was doing what I was doing because that was 93, 94, right?
Yeah.
And so now, I mean, literally I can pick this thing up and I can do, I can run my software from here.
Yes.
I can update projects and take so that perspective is unreal. And there have been software companies that have come and gone. There have been big players that have purchased out and squashed other software companies. There's new entries into the market all the time for various different things and various different products, and everybody's the best one out there. And I think it's great, right? I love it. This is for me, the goal for us on the software side was really just to be able to provide a service that was helpful. Like I literally want to be able to help these people be better at what they're doing. And if I'm not that, then I'm not the right player for you. So for me, this is, it is a business and it needs to be able to take care of the employees that exist, but I don't have to make a dime off of it. I'm fine. So for me, it's a matter of really truly being valuable. And so we've watched, cycles of companies that have, like the software space is very different than the restoration space in terms of sale, right? If my phone rings, I'm selling that project probably right then. 7 days later, if you haven't picked me, you're probably not picking me.
Yes.
So the software side of the sales cycle was different to try to navigate that. And it was interesting just in my brain, kind of walking through it going, okay, well, yes, the restoration people expect you to be around for a decade before they're going to even talk to you because they want to make sure you're going to last. And we're all crazy, busy entrepreneurs that are all stubborn. And, we have our own opinion of exactly how things should be. And if your product doesn't do exactly what I wanted to do right now, which just tidbit, nobody's going to find a product that does everything they want. Even my own product doesn't do everything I wanted to do in the restoration space. You're never going to find it because when you get to that point, you're like, oh, we could do this. And then you're like, we should have this feature. Well, so it's never going to be fully built out. But it's just the space has changed a lot. And currently we're in this, because of the economy, because of whatever, that, there is a lot of private equity money being thrown at the restoration space and plumbing industry and some of these guys. And so some of it's really interesting. I mean, I probably get 4 emails a day about wanting to set up a call to talk about buying out our restoration company and buying out our software company. And, how are you working this? And what do you integrate with this? And we can make this thing and you could be a bazillionaire. And that's all fine. Right. But, the market's changed. Like, and you've been around a long time on this too, Michelle, and like, you've seen it, like, a lot of different things. What are the things you think are the most interesting in terms of changing?
Oh, this is the
last
podcaster and you coming out,
Oh,
turning
my bad.
back on me. No, it's really totally fine. I love it. Gosh, biggest things. I think that the biggest thing right now is what you just mentioned, probably industry consolidation and independent companies like yourself figuring out what does that look like for us to stay relevant in a consolidating market, whether it's a competitor that gets some PE money or it's a competitor that gets bought by one of the big players or whatever that maybe, but it's also interesting on the flip side to see how that is playing out for some of the independent companies and those few years of transition when a competitor gets bought. Sometimes the independents end up doing a little bit better in those few years when a competitor gets bought because it's not necessarily an easy transition when there's a new company overseeing everything. So yeah, the economy's been interesting. This has been an interesting year for, I think, job volume for people. I feel like everybody's been all over the map. Some people have had great years and some people have had terrible years because storms aren't panning out. It's just the weather's been a little dull.
Sure.
Those are probably the big things. And then software is the other big one. I feel like restorers come to me all the time saying, I don't even know where to start in making a software decision. And there's so many, like you said, there isn't really one solution that covers everything, especially once you start factoring in like photo documentation and how are you taking the photos and are you doing 360 and are you, those kind of things that change the game a little bit. So I'm curious from your angle, what advice you give restorers when they come to you saying, hey, I'm really trying to figure out technology for our company. I don't know where to start. What do you tell them?
Sure. So the first thing we have to do is navigate where your pain points are. Because you've got to understand, like, here's the reality. Nobody wakes up and goes, you know what I need? I need some software. That's not what they do. What they do is they go, oh my God, like where's the information on this project? It's in a folder, it's at the office, or it's on somebody else's computer somewhere or whatever. What they're recognizing is their pain points. And so the first thing we have to do is walk somebody down the path of a pain point. What the first thing I would suggest to anyone is, like, get a list of software companies that exist in the space. Like, if you're providing restoration, then find software companies that do restoration. And then determine from that, like, look at all of them. This is an important decision. Once you buy into a software program, for the most part, you're going to stick around if it's providing value to you. There are companies that are distracted by the next shiny thing, and that's an entrepreneurial type environment. So the next shiny thing comes along and they're going to jump from whatever they're on to the next shiny thing because somebody said they were better, and maybe they have better marketing. But the reality is they may not be, and then they find that and then they're frustrated by it. I would say keep tabs on all the software companies all the time right now. Take a look at what's going on in this space. Look at it and say, okay, JobDocs exists. Albiware exists. PSA exists. Dash as CoreLogic exists. There's a couple of new ones out there and I can't even think of, I mean, there's a lot, right?
There's a lot.
I just don't know all the names, but I would say look at all of them. Like, it doesn't harm me in any capacity for you to look at something else and tell me you think something else is better than me. It's great. If that's the right fit for you, that's where you need to be. Because again, I'm trying to provide a solution that's helpful. I'm not trying to force you into a hole you don't fit in. And so it's a whole lot better for both of us, for you to be with a program that's going to provide you value than to, like, if you're not a fit for JobDocs, don't come in here and then be frustrated because that doesn't help either one of us. Then you're just mad and then you're complaining about something or whatever the case may be. Same thing with Albi or PSA or any of that. Like, if you have a problem with something they're doing, like, take a look at something else. It's interesting to watch the number of guys that I talk to that say, oh, well, we're going to be switching to this. Well, have you looked at anything else? No, but they said this is the best one. Or so-and-so that I know uses it and they say it's the best one. Well, here's what I can tell you. Russ Palmer's a great friend of mine. Russ at Titan does not run his restoration company just like I run Mr. Restore. So Russ has his software program with Accelerate.
Yep.
It's going to be more skewed to Russ Palmer's restoration company than it is to Mr. Restore. So, like, if you haven't even looked at other things, how do you know you're finding a solution that fits your need? So don't just come to me and take a look at what I have. Let's look at some other things. Like, are you mostly office driven in terms of your administration? Or are you mostly field based? Like, we built JobDocs because part of what drove me to do what I was doing was I couldn't find solutions that were easy to use in the field. On top of that, the solutions that exist, and I won't name names, but the solutions that existed at that time, you required, even in their own marketing material, you had to have someone managing your project management system. So I have to hire a $50,000 employee to just manage this thing, and your software is already more expensive. Is it really saving me anything? And is it making it more difficult? What we wanted to do, and there's some tools out there that are like this, they're field driven. So your technicians, your reconstruction staff, they all do in JobDocs, they're taking their actions from the field. I don't ever have to sit in an office and look at a computer if I don't want to. I can do everything from my phone. So if you're field driven, if you're a smaller team, kind of check out the things that are based on the field. If you're concerned mostly about the accounting side of things, that's what PSA is it's an proven solutions accounting. That was where they started. So maybe if you want some kind of specific integration on accounting, do that. Maybe you look at that and you go, wait, I don't want to have to be tied to their accounting. I want my own accounting. I want to use QuickBooks. I want to use Xero. I want to use whatever. So there are ways to navigate what your pain points are and what is the most important to you. And then take a look at the market. Do demos of the software. As far as I know, anybody that's worth anything will give you some kind of free trial, 14 days, 30 days. So take the trial. And we also, or at least at JobDocs, we recognize sometimes you start a trial and you don't get a chance to use it because fortunately you got busy. Like, when you're calling me about stuff, you're either crazy busy right now because you're freaked out about what's happening, or you're slow right now and you got time to try to figure out what's going on. It's never kind of when things are floating good and you're busy enough, but you still have a little time. Those are kind of the two times where people call. Well, if you're freaked out about something, it's not a time to onboard on software. Like, get through the freak out, deal with the triage, and then let's take a look at a software that might be able to solve a problem for you. And so that's what we would suggest is, look, don't worry about the trial side, at least for JobDocs for sure. If we can tell like something's going on, we'll extend the trial. If you're not using it because you're busy on something else and you're trying to figure it, like, again, I want to be helpful. So just communicate with me. The other thing I would make sure that people recognize is that communication side is just be clear in your communication. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what you see. Tell me what you think is great about Albi. Tell me what you think is terrible about JobDocs. Like, I've got thick skin. I've been in the restoration space a long time. I can deal with anything. There's not anything that you're going to frustrate me with. So let's navigate that and tell me what is it you're looking for that you don't think we have? Maybe we have, like we've got customers, Michelle, that have been with us for 8 years that will be like, oh, I didn't know it did that. Well, like we try to send out notifications all the time. We try to have you on updated training meetings. Like we need something that does such and such. Oh, well, you can do this. Just do this. Oh, really? Yeah. So I tell people all the time, you can be in a position where you're driving a Ferrari in first gear, and that's not any fun. So let's like figure out how to make these tools work, and let's make them work for you. And that's whether you're using us or using Albi or using PSA or using Accelerate or whatever. You do not know all the capabilities of those softwares. You also don't need all the capabilities of all these softwares. There are things in job docs that I never touch. Part of my staff at Mr. Restore may in fact touch it and use it. I don't touch it. I don't need it. So understand what your needs are is paramount in terms of being able to find a solution that's going to fix the pain. But the problem is the pain. It's not and it's not really even the options. Yeah, I mean, it's like there's a lot of options and it's a lot to navigate. And there's a conference coming up that you guys are doing media for with Phillips. It's a tech only conference. We at this point haven't committed to being there yet, Michelle. Primarily just because I could go to, there's 52 weeks in a year and I think I could do 104 shows.
100%.
And it's like, I just can't do that. Like physically, my team is not big enough to do 100 and whatever the shows are. So it's like pick and choose and navigate what's going on. And I love the fact that there are shows that are out there, but I've done some shows in the past that they were brand new and we didn't get any traction whatsoever. And it creates a frustration. And, hopefully this one turns out to be great. But if you're, and then that's a question, right? Like if you're needing something in the tech space, do you have time to, in fact, go to a conference and take a look? Well, maybe so. But, for us, we're 100% available all the time. We can do demos. We can walk you through stuff. We can train you. We're here for you. So
what do you Sorry, go ahead.
That's a long-winded way to answer your question.
That's okay. I was curious how what advice you give restorers who come to you and they're like, all right, whatever the platform is, we're changing softwares. We have so many problems with our current software provider. We have to change. My team is going to kill me. I don't know how to get my team to adopt a new software or where to even start with onboarding something new. What do you tell people in that position?
So again, that goes to the pain, right? The problem is, as leadership, you're not getting what you need. And you, as leadership, have to be able to lead your team where they need to go. And so that could be a whole different discussion about business models and EOS and all that, and how you lead your team into a place where everybody has buy-in. But if you have goals, and if your techs are frustrated because they're pissed off about whatever they're using right now, then the way I look at it, my perspective is, if I was talking to my team about that, like you guys came to me and you're pissed off because what we have is not working, then I'm trying to provide a solution. I need you to help me make sure that works. Like you have to be forthcoming with your team and you have to say, look, like I'm trying right now to get a solution. Here's what I'll do. You guys go do some research. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you've heard. Talk to, like in a lot of cases, you'll have guys that were technicians in another company. They've used 2 or 3 softwares already. Talk to those guys, find out what they liked, find out what they hated, and help navigate that. And in some cases, you don't have decisions anymore, right? Like, so the consolidation side, the mergers and acquisitions that's going on right now, there are guys that are on a program and that's what made them successful. They got bought out by somebody else and now their product is going to get shit canned because you got to switch to whatever you got tucked under, And so as a leader of an organization, you have to be in a position where you can say, look, guys, I'm doing my best to try to provide a solution to you that's going to make all of our lives easier. And I get it. This is not the most fun. We've got things we've got to transition over. We got some stuff we got to set up. But I'm asking for you guys to help me do this because I really believe this is going to make all of our lives better. And that's kind of what I talk to people about when they have this conversation and they're like, oh my gosh, like this is going to be so hard. It absolutely is. It's going to be difficult. Is the pain you're experiencing great enough to make a change? If it's not, then let's not do it. But I'm listening to you tell me that you're miserable and you're not getting anything done and stuff's slipping through the cracks and you're forgetting to bill and you're not collecting what you should be because you're not getting it done correctly. And I've got 17 different programs I have to be on right now, on logging in all these different places to try to get all the stuff that I'm trying to do. And so, those are the conversations we hear all the time. It's not easy to make a transition. And so we've done our best to try to create modules and tools that help teach them. And my team is pretty great in terms of being able to be customer service for them and hold their hand and walk them through it. Just navigating what the next steps are. But the reality is, the truth is, it's going to be difficult.
Yes.
Like adopting anything new is tough. Making time and space for even thinking about what the problems are is tough. So, I would say, investigate and then we'll provide you some tools on helping you understand how to transition your team without them revolting. Like we don't need a coup. So
we don't need a coup.
We'll do our best to stop that.
Especially when it's so hard to hire, we don't need a coup.
Oh my gosh, anymore for sure, right?
Ooh, yes. Okay, let's pivot a little bit. We talked a little bit about your podcast prior to recording, and I know that you said you're doing kind of fewer episodes right now, but you do have your own podcast.
I do.
You had some great guests on, and you had some great conversations. So talk a little bit about maybe a few guests that like stood out to you, where people could go if they wanted to listen to your podcast, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so our podcast is really kind of on all the channels. Like you can find it on Spotify, on YouTube, and on Apple, all the places that you can find podcasts. It's out there, and it's the name of the podcast is Business Aspirin. And what I was doing in that environment is, again, because I'm trying to be helpful to small business owners, primarily in the restoration space, is help them be able to hear from business owners and entrepreneurs that have had some success. Actually understand what problems they went through. What were their pain points? And so I would ask questions and I would just say, hey, tell me what's one of the best decisions you made in your business and in your journey that has led you to where you are today. And I would get all kinds of different answers. I will tell you as a token right now, one of the most common discussions that I had was around a book called Traction, which is the EOS model. And we, as a Mr. Restore, as a restoration company, are on the EOS model. Core, which is a group that I'm part of, is EOS model. And there's a lot of different, other restoration companies out there that are navigating EOS as a business model to help you organize your company and structure your team in such a way that you have a greater chance for success and everybody's rowing the boat in the same direction. That was one of the biggest conversations we've had. I've had a good conversation with Tom Gisler, who is now a part of Core, but was leading Restoration One at the time. And Tom was on and had some good insights because he's been part of growing a company, and now he's pivoted to help another organization that I'm part of have some growth as well, and that's exciting. And so he was a great conversation. And I've had some smaller companies come on. I've had companies come on and talk about safety, the safety side of things, and how they navigated safety and just some of their KPIs. And there's a lot of good episodes out there. And nothing to do with me because I'm pretty terrible at the whole process, but the guests that I was fortunate to have on were great. Some of it was so amazing. And so going back and listening to some of those, I kind of chuckle about some of them, like, oh man, that's cool. And some of them I'm like, dang it, I wish I'd done a second episode with you, or maybe I had asked this question. Because there's nuggets of gold out there that just exist. And I was very fortunate to grab some of those guys and have those conversations. And we could spin off into that right now, Michelle. I could start asking you questions because now you have your own thing that you're doing and you're running your own entrepreneurial business in the restoration space. So, we could ask questions. We can go either direction.
I think it's fun asking questions. I don't know about you, but I like being on the side of asking versus the speaking. So
yeah. Anyway. There's less pressure when you're asking, right? It's like, oh, okay, I got to think about the answer to that question.
There is until you get a guest on, though. I'm sure that you encountered this at least once. Get a guest on where it's like they answer maybe really quickly, and you've run out of your questions, and you need to keep the conversation going. And that
it's like I was hoping to get 30 minutes out of this conversation when we edited it down, and okay, yeah, no, I get it.
Goes either way.
But man, I had a couple that were the information was good. And the conversation was, they were good people, but it was less of a eloquent podcast style conversation. But I had some that were just spectacular and they were fun. And yeah, so if anybody wants to check it out, like Business Aspirin is the name of the podcast. And it was a great fun journey. You'll see a lot of this background and most of it. Occasionally I did them remotely. I did one with Chris Fisher from Balefish. And I was on vacation and I was sitting by a stream and I actually did the whole podcast from my phone. And I was sitting by this stream and there were people fishing, walked by behind me fishing. It was pretty great. Like I really enjoyed that one too. So maybe I need to pivot and go back to doing the remote version of it and make it new and fresh again.
I love that doing remote podcasts is so easy now, because those used to really stress me out, and people would love for me to bring podcast setups to shows or whatever. And it's like, you don't understand. It's really stressful.
Yes.
And I don't want to go with all that by myself.
Sure.
But it is so easy now. You can do so much on a
Yeah.
phone. Yeah. Okay. I'm curious, because you asked your guest this, what's the best decision you've made on your entrepreneurial journey?
So I like in regards to job docs, here's one of the things that I will say, and I think this applies to entrepreneurship, but this is going to be on the negative side of that. I think the worst decision that we made was we waited too long. I'm wired so that I wanted everything to be perfect. And so we had a product that was ready and we could have taken it to market, and we were ahead of some of the other guys in terms of capturing signatures remotely and doing that from the field, and some of the other tools that we had that were in place prior to the big boys having that stuff in place. And that was a fun conversation with those guys at the time, because they called me like, we got this. I'm like, I don't care. Like I've been doing that for a year. But we didn't take it to market because I was like, software needs to have all these different tools. Even, it should have this. Before we go, it needs to have this. Before it goes, it needs to have this. So what I would say is, in regard to that, one of the best lessons I've learned is sometimes you just need to take action. As entrepreneurs, as business owners, there are so many different things that can occur that can cause you to have paralysis analysis and you don't move. And what happens with most entrepreneurs, especially in the restoration space, is they enjoy what they do in terms of drying structures and helping people. And then they want to just do that on their own. But when they do that on their own, they start going, oh my God, there's a lot to this. And then they panic about things. Well, if you're going to go on the entrepreneur journey, you have to be willing to pull the trigger, and you have to, like, you're taking a risk. You're putting yourself out there and you're taking on the stress that goes along with that. The person that's going to be the most successful in this space, I think, is the one that can take the most stress. If you can navigate properly and effectively under a higher level of stress, you're going to be able to be successful in this space. And don't, like, you have to be quick to pivot.
Yes.
Because especially in today's world, with the TPAs that exist, with, Google changing their algorithm regularly, with TikTok existing and Facebook existing, you've got to be in all those places doing different things. And you have to quickly go, hey, this isn't working. I've got to have jobs coming in. What do I need to do? And so I think that's important. I think for us, one of the big initiatives we have as Mr. Restore is we've created this project called Restore It Forward. And so it's this Restore It Forward promise, the Restore It Forward guarantee. And what we've done is we said, look, we're going to give first. We're going to do things for the community. One of the things that we just did is, and I don't know if this is the right name of the program, but it's like Amazon has Clear the List for teachers. And so you can, however all that works, right? That wasn't what I was dealing with necessarily, but we made a decision to say, look, we're going to clear the list. So we cleared the list for 4 different teachers. And we spent the money to clear all their lists and give them their stuff. And so that's part of the community side of things. And I'm a firm believer, like, doing right first pays dividends. You can chase the dollar, you can chase the work. But being a part of your community and doing the right thing is what's going to lead to you being able to be successful in the space. So from that perspective, don't be afraid to pull the trigger, and don't be afraid to pivot quickly, because you have to be able to do that. And then just do the right thing. And I think those are important decisions in terms of the growth of your restoration company. And from that perspective, like, literally, I'm going to plug my podcast, but not because I want to plug my podcast. Like, I don't get anything out of you watching my podcast. Like, I don't, there's no financial reward, whatever. So there's a lot of really smart people that answered questions on there that can help you. So navigate what you believe are your pains and what you believe you need to understand, but do some research and pull the trigger and continually learn. Like, it was valuable for me to do the podcast because I've implemented things that I heard some of the guys talking about. I'm like, oh my God, that's a great idea. Let's do this. And so we started doing different ways to do rewards for our staff because of one of the conversations. And so don't, like, there's so many things, Michelle, in terms of
There's
yes, we're competitors, but like the Dalworth guys, Dalworth Restoration's been a big player in DFW for a long time. And I consider those guys good friends. And they've done a lot for me in terms of they've given me work. I was in a situation where I needed some extra support on big projects that I had picked up, and they were there, and they provided labor, and they provided fans and DHUs and all the stuff and part of that process. And I think social media has allowed us to be a little more active on not everyone is the enemy, but that's a big thing too, is make sure you understand, like, relationships are valuable, even if it's a competitor, and build those relationships and work on those pieces that are going to help you in the long run. I could go on and on about some of the best lessons that I've learned. Like, we could be here for days. So
I agree.
you cut me off whenever you're like, you can go on to the next question or whatever we need to do.
No, I love everything that you said, and I'm the same on my podcast with all the guests that I've had. There are always nuggets that you can pick up, and so then I think you and I probably have the same goal of, I just hope that some people will listen and pick up some nuggets, and those emails that you get from time to time of like, oh, that was great, that guest was great. That means everything, because I don't really make a whole lot of money off my podcast either, but it's fun to have these conversations and have the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, because you get to dig in on some stuff, and it is providing value to someone somewhere. And what I would suggest is, when somebody listens to this podcast, no, Michelle or I, neither one expect you to take everything that was mentioned here and turn it into something. But there may be one thing that was said that makes you go, there's an idea, and take it and run with it. And then for me, from that perspective, if you've listened to this podcast and you need to get a hold of me, Michelle can put my phone number tied to the system. Like, I'll answer my calls. So call me and let's chat about it. Leave me a voicemail though, because there's a lot of spam these days.
There's a lot of spam these days.
Or text me.
Yes, that's what I prefer to do. I let almost every call go to my voicemail, and then it's like, oh, I know who that person is, I'll call them right back. But too much spam otherwise. I love what you said about, today's world moves so fast, and as entrepreneurs, it can be paralyzing to make decisions. But part of what I've learned so far in my short journey so far is just going. Sometimes you just have to go, and you can course correct, you can pivot, you can go a different direction. If it doesn't work out, do something else. My team is working on doing something. We're going to do a little something different in 2025 from what we've done this year and last year with one of the publications. And, it's pivoting and learning and adapting, and things are changing so fast that if you don't adapt, you're going to get left way behind.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so I used it on my podcast. I had examples, and at one point I talked about my dad and his business. In my dad's business, my dad was wired so that he felt like he had to touch every project, and he had to be involved with what was going on all the time. Well, if you're not necessarily because he was controlling and demanding, but he wanted to make sure it was done right. And I appreciate that. And I learned that lesson from him, but I also learned from watching him do that if I'm going to try to grow and scale what I'm doing, I can't touch everything. So some things, like the reality for the restoration space, for everybody that's in restoration listening to this, our livelihood exists because things didn't go like they were supposed to. Otherwise, we wouldn't have an industry. So the reality for me is, I don't necessarily expect everything to go perfectly all the time, because that's part of what created our industry. So being able to respond to that and knowing how to course correct based off of things that didn't go well is a vital lesson. And I learned that from my dad, watching, going, okay, I can't touch everything. I want to grow. I've got to let some things go. What are the things that, and from that perspective, here's one of the things that I'll say. If you're going to let things go, find the things that other people are exceptional at, but keep the stuff that you're also good at. One of the guys on my leadership team, Jake, said the other day, for him, like, he would always keep all the shit work, the stuff that he didn't want to do, because he didn't feel like handing it to someone else. The reality is, some of your staff is wired differently than you. And so for some of them, like for instance, my wife would love to sit behind a computer and do data entry stuff and do all the computer work stuff. And she just thrives off of that. And I'm like, I want to punch myself in the face.
Yes.
Like I can sit behind the computer right now and do this podcast with you. This is spectacular for me. But to type code into Xactimate and put the line items in and then go look at the pictures and navigate. So he said, like, we have to recognize that sometimes keep the stuff that you are good at and excel at, hand off the stuff that you may not like, but somebody else may excel at. You've got to find those things, and that will drive some insane success. But if you try to keep everything, if you try to do everything, you're going to run into a brick wall that's going to prevent you from being everything that you could be. And we want you to be everything you can be. And so as a result, figure that out, right? Create a roadmap. Call me if you want help on that. I'll help you navigate those things. But there are people that are wired differently, so they like being admins. Let them be admins. Figure out who those people are. Figure out who wants to sit in an office. Sometimes they'll tell you they want to be out of the field more and do more stuff in the office until they do more stuff in the office. And then they don't like that anymore. So find your team, understand your team, and kind of go from there.
Okay, well, that's a great pivot because I want to talk about hockey. And part of the reason that you get to enjoy your son being so involved in hockey is because you've learned to take stuff off your plate so you have the time. Travel hockey is a big time commitment in and of itself. And so talk a little bit about kind of that journey for you. How was it to find the time and, getting to practices, those away tournaments, all of that? How has it been through this journey of finding like this balance between two companies, and now you have a son that's very extraordinarily busy?
Yeah. So a great question, because it's interesting. My perspective on it is interesting, I think, as well. But yeah, so when I start looking at the opportunities that entrepreneurship has afforded me, there's a time in my life where if the phone rang at 6 o'clock on Friday night and we were sitting down for dinner somewhere, I had to leave and go to work.
Yep.
And that sucks. Like, that's not fun. It's not fun to have to do that. It's not fun for my staff to have to do that. And I don't like for them to have to do that. But we've been fortunate enough, based off of just puzzle pieces we put in place. And a big part of that is job docs, to allow me the opportunity to be able to lead my team remotely. So I don't have to come in an office. I can go to job sites if I want to go to job sites. But for the most part, the things that I need to do to grow and develop our team, I can do remotely, and I can check on projects and I can task people, and I can do all the things through job docs from my phone in the field. And so it affords me an opportunity to have freedoms to do that. So that's led to, being able to take Brock, my oldest, all over the country to play hockey, and being able to still accomplish the tasks that I need to accomplish without being tied down. So I got some freedom in that process. Now, so like in 21, Michelle, I got really sick and almost died from COVID in 21. And I was completely out of commission for probably about 10 weeks. I was hospitalized for I was in ICU for 6 weeks of that. And then just couldn't really accomplish everything. But my staff was amazing. We had processes in place because of job docs, because we built those into what we do. People understood who we were. We built a culture around the company that afforded me the opportunity to go try to die somewhere. And it still moved forward. And I will tell you transparently, everything didn't go as spectacularly as I would want for it to. If I had been here, we would have done some different things. We might not have taken certain projects. There'd be some things that we had pivoted on. But it worked relatively well. And so now I've got a lot of freedom. The interesting thing about the freedom, though, is an idle Clint is not really a very good Clint. I need to be busy on something. So now I find myself at the end of the day going, okay, what did I accomplish today? Right? Like, I feel weird about some of the freedoms. Like, I'm like, man, my staff's all working. I should probably go sling some fans or something, because but yeah, I can go, if my 8-year-old has a baseball practice and I want to go, I can take off and go do that. I'm still available. I can still respond to things that need to be responded to, have conversations with adjusters or whatever. But like, technology has made it so that we can be very mobile in today's society. Now, I can't dry a structure from somewhere other than where the structure is wet, but a lot of the parts and pieces really affords me that. And man, I'm insanely grateful for what it's provided for me, and being able to, do some stuff with my kids. I was thinking about that this morning, actually, on this organization we work with, and we were doing a process practice thing together. Part of it was just trying to find gratitude on stuff. And one of the things that popped into my head was like, just the smiles of my kids from the stuff that they get to do. Now, our life's not perfect. I can yell at them, and sometimes I want to punch all of them in the face.
Yes.
But like just the gratitude for being able to be in this position. Like, I'm so grateful for the life that I have. And I want to be able to provide that same type of opportunity to others, which is why Job Docs exists. It's why Business Aspirin exists. And so I just think that's part of who I'm wired to be, is I want to be able to help and want to be able to give back. And it's fun. At the same time, I'm pretty intense on a lot of things. So people find that weird at times. They're like, okay. But yeah, like, so hockey's been a great thing for me and for Brock and I to get to enjoy. He drives now. So he's turned 16. Okay. So now I don't have to go to practice, and I don't have to be an hour early to every game until we travel out of town. Right. Cause then I'm still gonna have to go, but fun times.
It is fun times. What's your favorite thing about being a hockey or a sports dad? Because you also mentioned baseball, so I don't want to exclude other children from the conversation, but a favorite thing about being a sports dad?
I think sports have insane levels of value. And so my youngest, the 8-year-old, is playing baseball. He's starting to understand some of this and learn some of this. But the 16-year-old, the hockey player, he's better served in this capacity. But what he's learned is how to do hard shit. Yeah. Like, it's like, you don't, like, this is going to suck, and we're going to figure out how to get through this, and we're going to embrace this, and we're going to go. There are difficult things about sports and parenting through sports. Like, I've had some hard times in terms of trying to parent through, okay, what do I say right now? Yep. But it's so awesome to be able to be in a position where you've been entrusted with somebody else, and you're trying to raise that person into being a good human. Like, I'm not trying to raise an 8-year-old. I'm trying to raise a solid, supporting, loving, giving adult. Yep. And so we do some of that, but Brock has just recently learned, because of some stuff I do with an organization called Adaptive Training Foundation, which is spinal cord injuries and amputees and all that. And some of the training and stuff that he does, how to really bury himself, like how to go into that space that's beyond what you think you're capable of, and suffering through it and still coming out the other side of it. Like, I'm kind of getting emotional right now thinking about it. It's like, he's learning how to do that. And that's an amazing part of sports, learning how to be a team. Like, so the reality is, for me, like, I don't look at, Brock's not going to play professional hockey. I'm not delusional, be like, oh, my son's going to make it to NHL. I have friends that believe their kid's going to make it to the NHL, and there's maybe one or two of them that might. Yep. But the reality is, that's not most of what happens. But it's learn how to do hard stuff, and then build relationships. Like, some of these people that you're playing with are going to be relationships that you have forever. And some of them are going to be great connections in the future for whatever you choose to do. And you're going to be able to go, hey, so-and-so, I've got an idea. And you'll be able to talk about it. You guys are going to be close. Like, travel sports can build some relationships. Like, you're riding in cars together, you're in hotels together, you're hanging out. Like, there's some good value in learning and struggling and losing together and winning together and figuring out what the next step is. And it's such a great opportunity to be able to be a part of navigating someone else's life and being responsible for helping them. And I don't know that I do it well, Michelle, but I enjoy doing it. And I mean, everyone else will tell me my kids are great. Right? Oh, your kids are so awesome. I'm like, you're not around them at home. Yep. But I think that's kind of the story of most parents, right? It is.
I don't know that I'm navigating it that well either. With my son being a goalie, I'm usually like beside myself. So
yeah, sure.
Still figuring out my way.
Yeah, the reality is, it's goldfish, right? You have to be able to go, okay, I forgot about that already. On to the next play.
Yes.
It's, for me, it's because Brock's a defenseman, so there's a little bit of that too. Yep. Like, you can go be a forward, and screw up all you want. Nobody notices because you just didn't score, but it bounces around. But if a D-man or a goalie screws up and there's a point that goes in, Like it's very exposed. And it's one of those things. I think those are great life lessons too. So like, hey, it's fine. Let's move on to the next one. Let's have a short memory. Let's do the best we can the next time. Did you execute what you thought you were supposed to? Yes. Did you do it as best as you could? Yes. Okay, well, let's move on and let's have fun with it. Let's enjoy this process. And the fun side of it is just so great, right? So great.
It is so great. I agree. All right. Well, Clint, this has been awesome. We've talked about all the things. I've loved it. Thank you so much for joining the podcast today. Anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
No, not at all. Right. But truly, I am available. If anybody needs anything or has questions or wants something, like I'm here to support. Like that's my role in restoration and in life, is to be able to be here for you guys. And so I'm all in for it. And I am grateful for you having me on, Michelle.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me. Good luck to Brock in his upcoming season.
For more Restoration Today and the latest news, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, and find the latest episodes of the Restoration Today podcast on your favorite podcasting platform.